My name is Billy Bain. I am a surfer, an artist, and an Aboriginal man. I was born on Sydney's northern beaches, Garigal country, and raised in the salt water.
I mean, I've always felt like I've had a deeper connection to the ocean than anywhere else. It's the one place that I've always felt comfortable. I was pretty shy when I was younger. I was kind of, a bit of an anxious kid, but in the ocean I felt confident and I felt powerful.
Surfing was my first passion. It was my life. That gift came from this fella, my dad, Rob Bain. He was a professional surfer in the 80s and 90s, and he's still ripping.
When you're making them, you're kind of giving birth to them. They're in the garden and they're in the space.
Yeah.
My mum's name is Kath. Growing up, she was the creative one. Her mob come from Dharug country, the freshwater people of Western Sydney.
You know, I always kind of knew that I was Indigenous but didn't know what that meant or where our family were from. So when I was about 16 or 17, my mum probably did a fair bit more, I guess, research into it. We found out a lot more about where our people were from, which is just Western Sydney. This is a pretty special spot up here. I can look that way and I can see like pretty much most of the northern beaches and Pittwater, and I look behind me, you can see up the Hawkesbury. That's where my mob are from. Where this pops out, that's where the salt water and the fresh water meets. And I grew up surfing these waves. I played in this ocean every day of my life, pretty much. So, yeah, it means a lot to me.
I'm always going to be a surfer, but today, art is my medium. It's my message. As an artist, I'm digging into that story of mine, connecting a few dots and sharing it with a growing audience. It's pretty interesting working with just like it's literally is what it is, it's like mud. Grew up surfing, so I had always kind of been privy to this sort of masculine culture. A lot of my work was sort of, I guess, taking the mickey out of that, particularly through the lens of being an Aboriginal person. Like, how did I fit into that? It's like a bit of a cultural conflict, Growing up on the northern beaches, there weren't many blackfellas around.
Got a couple of freshies for the trip. So hyped. Looking sweet.
So I've decided to take a trip, a good old-fashioned surfing road trip. But this time, with a black twist. I'm going to connect with saltwater mob, to learn from them about the changing tides along our coastline, what's been taken and what they're bringing back.
I'm excited to kind of meet other crew and hear their stories and how they connect to the ocean and just get stuck in and experience something different.
And share a few tubes along the way?
Yeah, I hope so.
Pretty much down that way, that's my home, and that way is Dharug country, so that's my mob up there. It's kind of the bridge north. Two and a half hours north from Garigal begins Worimi country. Over 1 million tourists a year visit the beaches, coves and estuaries that shape the Port Stephens coastline. Standing aside the Pacific Ocean is the largest living sand dune in the southern hemisphere, the Worimi Conservation Lands. A site of great cultural significance, Worimi man Jamie Tarrant has brought me to this special place.
Sharing and telling that story, tell the truth of what this landscape means to the people.
Doing it the right way,
That's it, by community-led.
Burial sites, artefacts, and hundreds of shellfish piles, known as middens, are evidence of life here before the coast was colonised.
But it still gives us that link back to the past. It come back, that midden was 10 metres below.
Yeah.
The point, all we were seeing was that 30 centimetres at the top, but it went down 10 metres. just like a pyramid.
It's amazing, eh?
It is. Look at these middens and you go, man, how many feeds has this had? How many mob have been using this landscape?
But life here would change forever as the impacts of colonisation headed north. Saltwater communities were devastated along this coast.
They've taken our lands, they've poisoned our water holes, they've, you know, everything that we hold close to our hearts has been trashed. Since our people didn't walk country for the time when it was the dark sorrow times, this landscape's just been desecrated. But I think there's hope, you know, as together as communities, it means too much to us, this land and the cultural significance. The older folk have fought for what we've got today, but it's up to our generation to be able to take this step forward and think about, you know, the young folk coming behind us. What's going to be left for them? You know, if we don't care for this beautiful landscape, how are we going to teach our kids?
Each year in April, surfers on the east coast rejoice as the winds swing offshore. But out here, Warramai elder Auntie Beryl tells me that the seasons on country dictate everything, not just the waves.
This time of year, it's called the mullet run. When there's lots and lots of mullet around, it's in abundance. So the old villas only took what they needed, let the run go, to share it with what further up the coast.
That's really cool, because kind of for us, that's what, I mean, we're heading up the coast, we're kind of mirroring that whole mullet run, you know?
How good's that?
Yeah, I mean, it's...
You just imagine the old people, you know, land of abundance. It'd be how many fish you could eat, how many oysters you could eat or collect, and how many pippies you could carry back to your camp.
Imagine the food comas, which is sensational.
Yeah.
Oh, how good's that?
So we left the oyster shells here. We'll GPS it, and we'll call it Billy's Midden. So when he comes here, he can add to it. This is his connection to Warramai.
Unreal. I'd love to come back.
Yeah.
Those
Bring your oysters with you.
Yeah.
Further north, I've been invited to meet a surfer, reviving Warramai culture.
My name is William Simon. I'm 22. I'm born and bred in Warramai country here in Foster. I have the responsibility to keep it alive, handing down this knowledge of language and culture, teach these younger fellas. So when we get our ochre, paint it on their feet, legs upwards from their body, because when we do that, obviously the ochre comes from our Mother Earth. We connect them with our Mother Earth. When we dance, we stomp hard, connecting through that, and then brings our energy to our spirits and our ancestors.
I'm covered in clay every day, you know, with what I do, and sometimes I leave the studio looking pretty similar, but yeah, it looks unreal. I mean, just the action of you're almost, well, in a way they're painting, but you know, like it's just like, I don't know, it's hard to describe.
When they're together as a group, they do feel a lot stronger and safe. Once they put this paint on and dance, they got no shame. Makrumar lengaru agua dungalen wangu makruguba o makrumar lengaru agua makrumar lengaru agua. There would have been a barrier back then in the case they weren't allowed to do it, and it was almost shame to do it. And now it's different. Now it's a lot stronger. The Australian society doesn't see the coast as a black place. They see it as tourist destinations. We're still here. This culture isn't surviving, it's thriving.
Going surfing?
We're all one mob, learning and coming together and bouncing off each other. Like, you see me do this, you see me do that. They're all enjoying it.
There's so much energy like that where they're all kind of like looking at each other and like kind of copying each other.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
right.
It's a really sick way of, like kind of passing down this this energy. I didn't grow up with much like dance or much culture whatsoever where I grew up on the Northern Beaches. So
coming here and seeing you guys, you know, in full flight is like really inspiring, you know?
Yeah.
Before I head off, Will gives me a parting gift.
Here today on Warama country, I want to give you some words. Weeble.
Yeah.
That means hello.
Weeble.
Weeble, yeah, so Weeble.
Weeble.
Hello.
Yeah, bro.
Beach is Buna.
Buna.
Buna. And then as we say goodbye, we say Gapu.
Gapu.
Surfers have always chased warm water and perfect point breaks. Perhaps none more iconic than Crescent Head, here on Dungutty country.
It's cooking!
After a quick pit stop, I'm dropping in on an old mate, Uncle Robbie Page.
Big Bad Bill.
Hey, Rob.
Hey, mate.
Hey, Robbie.
Come and visit me, eh?
Yeah, bro.
Heart to heart, they say.
There you go.
Look at Big Bad Bill. He's with an uncle here. Come on in, Bill, and have a look. Bless me village, will you? Billy Bain style blessing. Bring it on.
Part surf shop, part museum, Pagey has built a shrine to surfing just outside of Kempsey.
There's my last board I hand-shaped 20 years ago. You feel those rails?
They're very sharp.
Are they sexy and sharp?
Yeah.
Look, there's me there when I was a spunk.
Lofty.
See doing a backside floater on it?
Robbie was the first Indigenous surfer on the world tour. He both travelled and competed with my dad.
I was flicking through these mags trying to see if I could find a shot of you and the old boy in the same one.
What about Bobby Bain? He went off, didn't he?
That's Dad with a broken arm on the
Okay,
cover
and
of the
there's,
mag.
put it up. And there's Rob Page there. Bobby was on fire, mate.
That's a pretty sick photo. I'm so stoked we found these.
When anyone on tour had kids, the kids were just part of the scene. So we just rubbed by the head. Billy would have come by and hey, little Billy Bain, pick him up, give him a little elbow, a kick, a little punch, whatever. You know, that's what he did to all the kids. It was pretty cool. So they grew up, you know. So it's a family.
But some of the great rides were picked off by Wollongong's Page, who was looking to progress to only his second Grand Prix final.
Pagey's biggest moment was winning the world's most iconic surfing event, the Pipe Masters in Hawaii, and bringing the trophy home to his saltwater mum.
I was living in the Housing Commission. I was living with my mum and my sister, and it was a tough time. And I brought that Pipe Masters home to the Blamby Housing Commission.
Far out.
Living in the hood.
It must have felt special, bringing that home.
It did feel special. I learnt my surfing off my mum. She grew up her first 12 years on the beach in a tent.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up with my dad. I just grew up with my mum. So my mum's ways were different to my dad's.
Yeah.
And, you know, I knew my mum's stories. I knew where she grew up and she told me lineage lines, but we didn't get paperwork until going down Ulladulla. So...
It's very similar to me. It's kind of, you know, I always knew I was Indigenous from, you know, probably my early teens. Mum knew, but we didn't really know what it meant, you know. We didn't have...
No one was watering any black seeds in anyone.
Nah, there wasn't.
You with me?
Yeah.
I think, right, in this day and age, if your mind and your heart's coming up, anywhere where there's togetherness and collectiveness, you're on. Anywhere where there's division and separation, that's barred.
Yeah.
It's not usable, so... And I think white Australia is pretty spiritually bankrupt. It's hurting.
Yeah.
And we don't want it to hurt like that. And I just think, you know, when you see a lot of crew, when they get a chance to have a conversation with one of our mob, they feel good after it.
Yeah.
They feel a bit more earthed.
Got myself a little Royal Indigenous sticker of Pagey. Definitely not getting pulled over now. How good's that?
It's unreal. Surfing's the healing place. Not no. It's got no prejudice. It just teaches every human, welcomes every human, washes every human, bathes every human, and actually it heals most humans that go to it. It's a healing place. It's incredible.
Balawanga Andi, Goreye, Nadi Bulungo, Yaban, Wanganye, Biraigo, Nimbandagay Jalam Gargirwa, Kaguguay, Gangalingagay, Yugera. Yana Yalami, Yam Marang, Kapagumamani, Uywa, Yana Nadi, Gurbi. Engeram Yugir, Marangagay, Wumaga, Bulungo, Kapagumang.
Following the mullet, my next stop is Coffs Harbour, on Gambanga country, home of the Big Banana. Siblings Amber Heard and James Mercy have gathered the locals for an early surf.
Been surf much?
When I can.
Yeah.
The kids surf more than me now.
It's a chance to share a few waves and get a healthy dose of saltwater therapy.
Saltwater therapy is a real thing, and as Aboriginal people we're connected in ways that people might think it's cliche and we speak about it all the time, but it's absolutely, the ocean is our family, we are kin, we are one. Obviously it doesn't look peaceful when you're getting smashed out there and you get pummeled and all that kind of stuff, but in a lot of ways surfing and the ocean is kind of the final frontier.
Amber and James manage a program called Naru's Surf Gatherings. Once a year, they put on an event, drawing Indigenous surfers from across the continent to Gambanga.
Last year we had 90 competitors come from around the country. You'd probably call it like a modern day corroboree of sorts, blackfellas meeting up to surf and blackfellas connecting in that way around the ocean.
For the rest of the year, Naru works with local youth.
Hallie's got a board. If you're going we all know the impacts of the stolen generation and people being displaced from their communities and country in some small way by what James and I are doing and what we're trying to do. Hopefully we can create a safe space for people to talk about their mental health, for young people to remain connected.
It gives them a sense of calm. It gives them a place to be themselves. It connects them to country. It's part of who they are. It's part of who their ancestors were. They're saltwater people. This is part of them.
One, two, three.
Out of the ocean, Amber and the mob I met today are making different waves. In, of all places, school.
Yeah! I did it!
Gambanga Gingana Freedom School opened in 2022.
On a daily basis, the kids will engage in Gambanga.
Do it.
I guess it's like pieces of a puzzle, and like in a lot of sense, like so much of our culture was imploded because we were told not to do language, we were told not to speak. There's still a long, long way to go, and I am hopeful, but we just got to keep our foot on the gas because the job's not really done, so yeah.
The Big Banana.
Bundi Barway. Bundi's banana and Barway is big.
Bundi Barway.
The young kids are feeding off the elders, and in a sense the elders are getting so much out of the young kids loving these programs because they're seeing them through this lens of maybe being like, I couldn't have done that 10, 15 years ago, even more recently.
You boys want to show your Billy how to shake a leg?
I don't know how to shake a leg either.
Legs out, arms out.
The arms like this, on your toes.
Hey, move.
It's just like a bright future, you know. Some of these kids, they got the world ahead of them, and that kind of chokes me up a bit to think about what they're going to be doing, you know. Like, these kids are going to be leading our country. Bundi Bardaway, Big Banana. What a cool place. Once the domain of surfers and hippies, Byron Bay today is a tourist mecca. But it always was, and always will be, Bundjalung land, home to saltwater mob for tens of thousands of years. Solly Bailey grew up in these world-famous waves. A professional surfer and Yaegal man, he surfed on the world tour in 2019.
It is the pinnacle of professional surfing. Like the highest level of surfers are generally all congested in that tour. It becomes a role to hope to inspire and represent on the biggest stage you can.
Pretty special moment right there.
And that's just what Solly did, proudly wearing the Aboriginal flag in competition.
An unprecedented request to compete under both the Australian and Aboriginal flags in 2019.
So no one had run two flags before. It was awesome. It sort of changed the world tour in a way. It is really cool. I think surfing is one of the forefronts of being open and positive and giving us all the opportunity to represent who we are as people.
Footy, boxing, tennis, black athletes have been representing for decades. But for surfing, this was a first.
Yeah, when I first saw you on the tour, I was like, I wish I could do that one day, like to have that experience representing Aboriginal culture, to be like one of the best things ever.
Solly's journey is inspiring Ewart surfer Leilani Zorik to make her own dreams come true.
Ever since I was like tiny, I would like always say to my mum and dad, I want to be the first ever Aboriginal woman world champion surfer.
Yeah, I mean, you might be not just the first women's world champion, you might be the first Indigenous world champion surfer.
You're gonna be there, I guarantee it.
Is there a goanna behind you?
He's coming to say g'day.
Like me, Leilani grew up in the saltwater, surrounded by her family.
I was 2 days old. My dad put me on a surf mat and I sort of skimmed across the shore. I started riding these type of boards, and these are easily my favourite, and I love the colours pink and yellow. I love being in the ocean and getting wet. I feel passion every time I go in the water. You feel so stoked. Ochre Rock, it's just over there.
Cool.
Oh, just be careful because these ones get a bit slippery.
Yeah.
Oh, these rocks are really hard to get down.
There's been a real theme of resilience that I've noticed amongst these communities. There's a real level of pride, but I think that comes along with, having fun with culture. And I think though there has been, terrible things, there's a lot of trauma in the background that's kind of always going to be there. Everyone that I've met has really, they're really taking that and then uplifting each other, like there's a real sense of pride and a real sense of resilience and strength. It's beautiful to see. How's yours going?
It's all right. It really does look like my brother.
My brother doesn't look like that. My brother's a bit better looking. What was the last competition you won? You won it, right? The one in Cops?
Yeah, I done the Oz Scrum Cup, the Billabong one.
I saw a photo of you with the flag across your shoulders, getting cheered up the beach. That must have been pretty special, eh?
It was one of the best moments of my life.
Yeah.
I love holding the Aboriginal flag. We wouldn't have been here without our elders, represented our culture and passed it down to us. It doesn't matter where you come from, you should always be proud of who you are and what you've achieved in life.
All road trips must come to an end. And for For me, it's time to head home. Something big has come up back in Sydney.
Nubu Bunjalung.
Howdy.
This trip, in contrast with all the ones I've done in the past, has been a little bit different, you know. It's been less surf, surf, surf and a lot more cultural experiences, which has been great. It's really opened my eyes up to a lot of things that I never really encountered when I was on the road when I was younger.
We are delighted to have you here, the winners of the 2023 Archibald Wynne and Sulman Prizes.
My first time entering these awards, a double nomination is a huge surprise. First for my sculptures, Black Excellence for the win, and second my painting, Black Men Can't Surf, in the Sulman.
It's kind of a self-portrait without being a self-portrait. What this painting embodies, you know, I'm seeing that on the road. I'm seeing that with mob all up and down the coast.
Weeble, hello.
Yeah, bro. We're all here and we're all surfing.
Heart to heart, they say.
Being privileged enough to go away and meet mob and be accepted into all of these different communities, I feel like I'm growing as a person. Being able to share that story with wider Australia is a blessing.
Really?
So these are stories that need to be told. They're important. They're a realistic view of what's happening in Australia right now. And it's a changing tide. It's happening everywhere. It's happening on the beach. It's happening in the galleries. Like, people are taking notice.
Water